Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. With further reaction to the Australian Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton is planning to defy the FIA's attempts to further enforce the sporting code around jewellery, saying that it should be a personal choice. Very much intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Not far from 1,000 subs, love to see it lads. ESPN F1 say the following, these are the four kind of the Twitch lads, all in the points for I guess the first time ever. Two of them on the podium, Lando made the points, Albon with a phenomenal performance to get up to P10 as we looked at yesterday. Got to talk briefly though about Ferrari, because wow, the points gap that Leclerc is putting on the rest of the field is no doubt very impressive. Yes, it's only 3 races down, there are 20 races to go. A lot could change over the course of the year, but if Ferrari keep up the pace they currently have, with potential upgrades and improvements that are coming down the pipeline, it's going to be difficult to beat this team, because the Red Bull can match Ferrari on its day, but obviously the reliability issues have caused them to lose an awful lot of points, and Mercedes, just in terms of pure pace, have a lot to find on the Ferrari. And obviously Leclerc is like driving phenomenally, incredibly calculated, incredibly calm, and picking up the fastest lap point as well, which certainly down the line could make a big impact also. So Leclerc's basically been faultless, was this past weekend as well, and the car was there to match him. Some calculations have been done effectively saying that if there were no safety cars, Leclerc would have had a gap of 25, maybe 30 seconds on Verstappen, even if Verstappen didn't have those issues that he had, and maybe 50 seconds on Mercedes over the course of the race. So, pretty much a second lap on the Mercedes, which is kind of the deficit we have seen there. But apparently Ferrari actually brought a bit more power this weekend, we'll see in a second. A neutral engineer was revealed if they can lower the car like Red Bull does, because of course the porpoising was still a bit of a concern for the Ferrari this weekend, right? If they can kind of get on top of that in addition, because Leclerc was saying like, look, it's not good for me that I'm bouncing down the back straight, doesn't make it easy to kind of spot the corner into turn 9, and if they can get rid of that, then they might even be effectively unbeatable this season, which would be pretty incredible where they've been the last couple of years. Hope it doesn't happen though, right? I hope we actually have a fight for the championship, but Ferrari I'm sure are going to make the most of the advantage that they currently have. This is the advantage Leclerc has on the rest of the field. As I said yesterday, if you add together Russell and Sainz P1 or P2, P3, they come to, well, Leclerc has more points than both of these guys combined, more points than any of the other constructors, which is pretty absurd, way above the rest of the pack right now. Beautiful graphic created by the race. Obviously in the midfield there is very tight, but this is a significant margin. The race also mentioned this, right, that winning the title from behind, there's not been many times in history that it's happened, well, a deficit like this. Max Verstappen right now has a 46-point deficit to Charles Leclerc. Yes, there's 20 races to go, but only 6 times has a deficit greater than that actually been overcame, at least at adjusting points to the current system. It certainly happens, it may well happen again, but if things continue as they have been, it's not looking all that good for really anyone that isn't Charles Leclerc right now. So of course, look, a long way to go, but it's got to be said that they are looking very strong, and also because of the fact that they have more in the tank here. We talked about a little while ago that they've been running their engine on a conservative mode. Not sure how much they have left in the tank, maybe 25-30 horsepower I think might have been mentioned. Supposedly they approved a small increase in power, about 5 brake horsepower this weekend, to counteract the greater speed of the Red Bull that they had in Jeddah, right? They're probably thinking, okay, maybe we should have opened the engine up a bit more in Saudi Arabia to try and get that victory there, because of course Red Bull had a much lower downforce setup in that situation. Now this weekend was rather interesting, right? Especially that restart that Leclerc had, I think the second safety car restart, when he pretty much messed up his restart, understeered into kind of the final corner, and Verstappen had a great run on him down the main straight. He had the slipstream, pulled out the left-hand side, and I was thinking Verstappen was going to go past him into turn 1, but somehow the Ferrari out-dragged the Red Bull there. And yes, the Red Bull were running a different downforce setup in Australia than they were in Saudi Arabia, right? They ran more downforce with the intention to kind of be more competitive with the Ferrari in the corners, but still, I thought the Red Bull with the straight line speed they have had should have been quicker than the Ferrari, but the Ferrari kept up with him and managed to hold the inside line into turn 1, and then Leclerc was able to pull out a massive gap after that. That was really the only time Verstappen put any pressure on Leclerc all race, and still the straight line speed of the Ferrari actually seemed to kind of match the Red Bull, which maybe is kind of due to them bringing a little bit more extra to the party. I believe they've said that for their second power units coming in maybe a few races time, that's when I think they have a reliability upgrade to the point where they'll be able to open up that engine even more. So I believe that right now they're playing effectively a conservative engine game to make sure their engine doesn't explode and have any reliability problems, which of course their reliability has been great outside of some issues with Sainz's car. So if they do have plenty more brake horsepower in the tank, it definitely will paint a scary picture for the competition, to be perfectly honest. And maybe they have even more to bring in the next race in Imola, right? Maybe they just turn it out by another 5 horsepower. They think they can get away with it from a reliability perspective and try and get a 1-2 in front of the home crowd. That would be pretty spectacular. Let's talk Mercedes then. So Hamilton and the other guys, this is a Petronas garage, I believe, in Malaysia. They're out there right now doing something or other. I think it's kind of media type stuff, but I think people were kind of suggesting he's talking to the Malaysian guys, trying to make sure the Grand Prix gets back on the calendar. But this weekend was a decent one for Mercedes again. They pretty much did what they could with the package they had. Definitely seemed a little bit closer to Red Bull this weekend, in fact a lot closer, right? Even though maybe it was the Red Bull that just dropped back from the Ferrari. At the same time, then maybe the Ferrari only pulled slightly further ahead just because of this extra, brake horsepower advantage that we just looked at. But Mercedes, of course, have a pretty sluggish car, but at least it's reliable. The only team so far to have put both their drivers in the points at every single race, puts them P2 in the Constructors' Championship, which if their car improves, should be okay. Now, of course, the big discussion really before the weekend, or one of the big discussion points, was about the sporting code. I believe this has been in the sporting code since about 2004, 2005. The wearing of jewellery in the form of body piercings or metal neck chains is prohibited during the competition, may therefore be checked before the start. This was kind of reiterated before the weekend by the new race director Nils Wittich. At least there's Eduardo Freitas as well, but this weekend it was Wittich, and he basically put this as a special note in his race direction to say, yes, this now will be enforced a little bit more, because it's been the case for quite some time, since a very long time ago, drivers been wearing watches and this type of stuff in the car, which seems a bit unnecessary, but you think body piercings might be okay, except of course if they're going to potentially affect rescue operations, and getting something kind of embedded in you wouldn't be the greatest situation, right? So it is a bit of a concern on that front from the safety side, which is really why this is the case, to be honest. But Lewis Hamilton isn't happy about it, of course. He's got a fair few piercings in his ear and stuff like this, and doesn't want to have to take this stuff out before every single race. He's basically ignored this rule for practically 15 years, and hasn't really been enforced, to be honest. But now they seem to be trying to do that, and he's had a few words to say. Reckons you should be able to be who you are, and doesn't plan to at all go against any of this stuff. So F1's race director has said the law is there to protect the driver by not hindering any speedy escape from the car. Theoretically, he could be fined or docked points if he breaks the sporting code, but I believe there's going to be a grace period. At least Sky Sports seems to understand there will be a grace period for drivers, with the FIA waiting to see if Hamilton's stance will change over the coming races before determining whether any action is required. So whether it's kind of just for now it's just basically been discouraged, you shouldn't have piercings, you shouldn't have any jewelry in your ears, stuff like this, but it hasn't been explicitly enforced, and now the FIA after a few races might decide to clamp down on this a little bit more. But of course Hamilton isn't exactly sure what they're going to do about that. Even Verstappen was kind of joking about nipple piercings and stuff like this a little bit ago, but Hamilton added, I've got certain piercings I really can't take out that not many people know of. I'm kidding. It's been the rule forever. Since I've been here, it's been the rule, so there's nothing new. I'm just going to come with more jewelry next week, Hamilton says. So not planning at all to go back on his word, right, and what he's been doing for the last few years. Effectively said the following: don't have any plans on removing them. Feel they are personal things. You should be able to be who you are. There's stuff that I can't move, right? Some of this stuff is welded in. I literally can't take these out. I think he's pointing in his ear. They're literally welded on, so I'd have to get them chopped off or something, right? Saying he's got to chop off his ears or chop these things out if that's the route they want to go. So they'll be staying, he says. I've got plenty of piercings as we just looked at, right? It's been the rule forever. So interesting statement for sure. I wonder what the FIA will decide to do on this front, right? Because if Hamilton's like, look, I'm not removing them, doesn't really matter what you say, they can't even be removed. I can't take them out and put them back in again after the race. Bit of an effort. Of course, look, it is technically the rule. It's not been enforced for a very long time. Hamilton doesn't seem to be too concerned that it's going to be enforced strictly as time progresses. And are these particular piercings particularly affecting any rescue operations? They might be in certain instances, but it seems relatively unlikely, right? Even though there's a possibility that it does. So there's always a question about that. We'll see what happens in the coming days or coming races if there is this kind of grace period, but Hamilton is certainly not planning to change anything. So the FIA's got to make their minds up at some point or another what action they decide to take here, of course. You also got to think other drivers as well, like Leclerc with a watch and stuff like this he's been wearing. To me, that's kind of what instigated this kind of further clampdown this season, with the change, of course, of race direction. Quick discussion on Mercedes. I think even Russell mentioned this in a post-race interview that they had the 5th fastest car this weekend. I feel like that's somewhat, I don't know if they're looking at the data exactly correctly, right? I guess in kind of qualifying and practice, they didn't have the quickest car by any means, but they managed to finish 3rd and 4th in what they reckon was the 5th fastest car, which I feel like is kind of an optimistic appraisal of the situation being the 5th fastest car, but each to their own, I suppose. That's kind of what Mercedes do, but this time they're not saying 2nd fastest car, they're saying 5th fastest, but there still was some discussion. Why was the gap smaller to Red Bull this time? Was it because the car was better? Was it because Red Bull were worse? They reckon that the front left tyre, which of course is the one under the most stress on a circuit like this, a right-handed circuit you have to go around, the front left tyre is going to take the most heat. Certainly did to Alonso on the sets of mediums that he had on at times, but seemingly Russell and Hamilton were able to keep those in better nick, as was the Ferrari, than the Red Bulls were able to do. So not necessarily still a second to the Ferrari, 6/10 to Red Bull per lap, so they're obviously going to have to muster something up over these coming weeks with the upgrades they're supposedly going to bring to Imola. This also real quick on Masi, of course, just speaking of the kind of race directorship, Toto Wolff had a few words to say, right, as he often does. You hear from the drivers and how the drivers' briefings were conducted, and some of the guys said it was almost disrespectful how he treated some of them. He was just immune to any feedback. Basically sounded like Michael Masi never listened to any of the feedback and the criticism that was leveled against him, and even today he has not probably reflected that he actually did something wrong, even though it came out in the official FIA kind of investigation that it was human error that caused the result at Abu Dhabi. Seemingly there was a promoter in one of the races in the Middle East who said he was so relieved he had gone because he got so much abuse from him. He was a liability for the sport because everyone kept talking about Abu Dhabi and the race director. The race director should not be someone people talk about, but someone who does the job and makes sure the race is run according to the regulations. I feel like this is a fair point in all honesty. Of course, lots of rules were changed after Abu Dhabi last year, but it does feel like the Michael Masi discussion simply will not go away. This also, just to mention real quick, because there was some talk about the fact that there was not a fourth DRS zone in the ends in Australia. Did it affect the kind of overtaking potential to a degree? I think it certainly did. Probably some more overtakes would have gone down if there was the DRS down that back curve. Would it have been too dangerous? That's what they decided in the end, that some kind of DRS down that back straight would have been a bit of a problem. Of course, look, I think this weekend's race was pretty good. Wasn't a terrible race. Give it like a 6.5 out of 10 or something. Yes, the extra DRS zone would have allowed more overtaking, but is that necessarily a good thing, right? I don't want overtaking to be too easy. Overtaking should be challenging, right? It should be difficult to get past, but it should be achievable to get past, which certainly it is on some circuits. Some DRS makes it too easy, right? It gets kind of frustrating when the faster cars are just breezing past the slower cars with that extra advantage. But certainly something they'll have to think about here, because arguably this weekend it should have been 4 DRS zones. Last time out in Jeddah, maybe it should have been 2 DRS zones. With these new cars, they're going to have to adjust pretty quickly how many DRS zones are actually on this track. And just to finish out with a couple of things, this I thought was really good from F1 Stats Guru. This is the first time, or the widest win margin for Ferrari since all the way back at the 2002 Spanish Grand Prix, where Schumacher won by 35.6 seconds, Charles Leclerc winning by 20 seconds, is frankly a spectacular margin, especially given the fact that the safety car came out twice. Can't imagine what the winning margin would have been if that was not the case. Probably pushing 30 seconds of the odds might have been challenging Schumacher's, most recent, record on the Ferrari front. And just to finish out with this as well, media ratings for the drivers at the Australian Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc tends all the way across the board again. It is interesting how these work out, right? Because Max Verstappen finds himself getting a 6 from Planet F1 and a 7.6 overall, but Sergio Perez gets a 7.9 despite, doing worse in the same car. And the fact that Verstappen was out of the race, therefore, means that he gets a worse score, even though not, of course, his fault, right? And Perez lost places on the start, all this type of stuff. So don't really understand how they do a lot of these. I guess it's based on feel a lot of the time. But, shout out to Alexander Albon getting a 10 out of 10 for Crash.net. Love to see it. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.